If you've wanted a car that's been able to traverse the dunes of Dubai, the forests of South America, and take the kids to school, then the answer has always been the Toyota Land Cruiser. It's a car that has established a reputation, a fierce reputation for reliability and go anywhere ability. But these days, the Land Cruiser, well, it's a little bit long in the tooth and it's been around for quite some time, and many other rivals have cropped up to stand alongside it. So how does it fare in 2023, and why should it be on your list if you're looking for a large, go anywhere SUV? That's what we're going to find out today. The chunky, boxy dimensions of the Land Cruiser have been part of the fabric of motoring for decades now, and it still looks really cool these days. It's just maybe a little bit behind the times. You've got that big bluff front end and the squared out rear of the car, but overall I think it's a design that still looks really cool. It just might not be quite in keeping with what people might be expecting from a modern day vehicle. If you like buttons, you are going to love the interior of this Land Cruiser. There are buttons everywhere. We've got them on the steering wheel, we've got the navigation buttons, we've got the heating and ventilation controls, the four-wheel drive settings, we've got ones for the ventilated seats, for the power, for the windows, for the lights, for the seat itself. There are buttons everywhere. It's like someone sneezed buttons in here, but I actually think that's kind of cool, and it means you've got plenty of options when it comes to changing all the settings of every single part of this car. Overall, the architecture is a little bit dated. It feels slightly behind the times. You've got this kind of wood steering wheel, and the way that everything is stitched together just feels, well, it just feels a little bit old school, but that's okay because it ties in with the overall character of the Land Cruiser itself. Now, of course, you've got this lovely commanding view of the road ahead, and actually the concave bonnet header view is quite cool to look at. And one cool feature that this one has is a refrigerated box in the middle, so you can keep all of your drinks and your snacks and your yogurt for later nice and chilled. And I think that's going to come in very useful when you're doing those long day trips and those long sessions in the saddle behind the wheel of the Land Cruiser. Everything is just, it's just very busy, and I think you'd probably get more used to it as you spend more time with this car, but certainly up and initially, and I found it straight away when just coming to with this car for the first time, that getting up to speed with all of those various controls does take a bit of adjustment. But everything is nice and solidly put together, and I do like these seats for the level of cushioning that they have, and they feel very supportive and like you could spend a lot of time here. For such a large car, there is unsurprisingly quite a lot of space in the back seat of the Land Cruiser. The floor itself is nice and flat, so my feet are nice and comfortable. I've got plenty of room for my knees and for my legs in general. The high height overall means that headroom is good too. And actually there's not too much of a transmission tunnel in the middle either, so the person sat in the middle is going to be able to stretch out relatively well. We've got ISOFIX points on either side, and we've got nice dedicated controls for the heating and ventilation back here, as well as for the heated seats, which is quite a luxurious function in a car as utilitarian as this. It all feels very robust and quite chunky, but it's worth bearing in mind that it is quite a step up to get into the back seat of the Land Cruiser. So if you do have mobility issues, or if you just struggle moving about in general, then I think this probably isn't going to be the best choice, because it does take a fair amount of oomph to get up and into the back of the seats. This particular Land Cruiser has a bit of a party trick in that it has 7 seats to offer. Now, the seats themselves are relatively easy to put in place. In this car, they're electrically operated, so you simply flick a switch and they kind of rise out of the floor. But the one thing I would say is that these middle seats are really heavy, and these are not electrically operated. You have to use the levers at the sides to bring them forward and fold them over. And doing so is actually quite a faff, and it takes quite a bit of work to get them into position. But once you do, you have got 2 occasional use seats back here. And actually, in terms of knee room and leg room, it's not too bad at all. The one thing I would say is that when you've got them in place, there's not a lot of boot room left. And in fact, if you had 7 people's worth of luggage, you're going to have to put it on the roof or take a different car, because it's not all going back in there. However, it's nice to have the option, and it means that you can take 6 extra people along the ride with you. And that's quite useful if you're doing school trip shares or just going on a bit of an adventure with your friends. You've got 2 options when it comes to opening the boot of the Land Cruiser. You can use this quite cool little secret button down the side here to open the glass section. You can get in there nice and quickly if you're in a hurry, or of course you can open the full side mounted boot, which you have to be a little bit careful of in case you're parking near a wall or in a tight parking space, because, well, you won't be able to get in the boot unless you use that glass section. When you've got all 7 seats in place, and that's optionally available on the Land Cruiser, you can see you've just not got really any boot space at all. This is about the same as you get from a city car, so realistically, if you have got 7 people in there, you're not going to be able to bring all their luggage with them. However, fold this row down and you've got 620 litres of boot space to play with, which is more than large enough for 5 occupants to get everything in there that they need. You can, of course, extend that further by folding down the middle row as well, and that opens up a whole load of space. It makes it a very versatile and usable package, but of course, the detriment is that this 7-seater version does have a very small boot when you've got all those chairs in place. If you want a traditional SUV, then you can't get much more old school than a Land Cruiser. It hasn't changed a lot in recent years, and despite some tweaks and updates, the basics of it remain the same. In this car, we've got a 2.8 litre turbocharged diesel engine, which produces around about 201 brake horsepower, and that means 0 to 60 time of around 9.7 seconds, which actually is pretty respectable for this size and weight of vehicle. Of course, lots of aspects in this vehicle are, well, they're quite back to basics. The steering has quite a lot of slack to it and feels a little bit strange and elastic, and the whole body generates quite a lot of shake over bumps and over imperfections. And it feels rugged. That's the lasting impression that you'll get from a Land Cruiser, is that it feels like it's just going to keep going on and on and on, which is what it's always been designed to do. I think you've got to look at the Land Cruiser with its ability to go absolutely everywhere and be very reliable as it does that. Against a traditional SUV, a more road-focused one, I can't see honestly why you'd want to go for the Land Cruiser, because it doesn't deliver the same kind of refinement or comfort that you'd get from something even like a Skoda Kodiaq. I think when it comes to rivals, there are pretty much only 2 for the Land Cruiser. You've got the Land Rover Discovery and you've got the Land Rover Defender. And both of those cars do feel slightly more polished to drive than this old battle axe, which is what it feels a bit like. But don't look too negatively on the Land Cruiser. I think it's still a very pleasant car to get around in, and because it's fitted with a variety of off-road systems, it is going to be able to tackle pretty much anything you can throw at it. But in the same way that a multi-tool can cut through wires just as easily as it can open beer bottles, the Land Cruiser can take to the road very comfortably and still deliver that off-road performance that you want from it. It also has a superb reputation for reliability, so when it comes to fixing it and maintaining it, you know you've got a really strong background there. It just feels somewhat choppier and rougher around the edges than more road-focused SUV alternatives, but then you can't fault it for that, because after all, this car is designed to go off-road first and foremost, and then deliver the SUV abilities afterwards. In terms of efficiency, we're looking at around 29.4 mpg combined, and that's according to Toyota, so you might actually be able to get a little bit more out of it. And I'd say that's pretty much par for the course, particularly for quite a large diesel engine. That's not too bad at all. I think how successfully a Land Cruiser will integrate into your life depends on what you want the car for. If you want an SUV that's going to be really refined and efficient and primarily for on-road use, then this isn't the car for you. However, if you want a car that is more rugged and capable, yet still able to take 7 people along for the ride, then the Land Cruiser could actually slot in pretty nicely in day-to-day life. It will bring slightly higher running costs, and it will be slightly more to tax, but as a car that won't let you down day in, day out, the Land Cruiser will still be one of the best choices out there. Thank you for watching this new car review on the Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of the big Land Cruiser. Would you still opt for it, or would you go for something like a Land Rover Discovery instead? And since you're here, and because of course you don't want to miss a new review, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel and click on that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video.